Testing 1, 2, 3. We are live. I'm ready to get into it. I'm ready to have an amazing time. Yes, sir. I'm pumped. I'm pumped. I hope you guys are pumped. I hope you guys are having a good time. I hope you guys are ready. Start a poll. Did you smash the like button? All right. All right. Oh my goodness. So this atheist says that the universe doesn't need a god, and it absolutely backfires. And guys, make sure to watch till the end because I have another video from John Lennox explaining why the universe needs a creator. Shout out to John Lennox and Cliff, and give me an answer. So let's get right into it.
Around when the Earth was in. My issue is that when I study the universe, I don't see any necessity of a God or a personal God at that as well. And so, like the example you showed, like life doesn't come from non-life.
Right.
I don't think we totally have all the answers there yet because there have been recent scientific studies. Like I just watched a TED talk about it 2 years ago about these scientists in a lab. They put some chemicals together that were probably around when the Earth was in its young state and had this kind of primordial ooze. And they noticed that certain collections of these molecules would actually like feed off of energy and have very lifelike characteristics. Like in one set they would like vibrate and like dance around and move around each other. Another one would actually seek out other little energy balls and like collect it and get bigger. And sometimes they would like form together and create a hybrid one that would replicate and dance around and do everything and have properties of all the other ones. So that's just an example of how I don't necessarily think we have all the answers as to like, you can't just like say, oh, we don't know right now, so it must have been God or something. So I'm just, and you usually have like those 5 points you always go to, like rational cover from irrational, morality and all that kind of stuff. So if you could just like help me find something in the universe that necessitates a God, that'd be great.
I am totally open to scientists taking matter, putting matter together in such a way that life is formed. It's exactly what I believe. An intelligent mind created matter, put it together in such a way that life was formed. So I have no problem with scientists in a lab creating life. But I would love to see a scientist with nothing, nothing, make something. I don't think that's possible. So, you have nothing, and suddenly you have something. I'm convinced that takes a creator. That takes some type of supernatural being to bring something out of nothing. And I am convinced also that it takes an intelligent mind to put matter together and energy together in such a way that you got life. The idea that that just happens by chance, there's no evidence to support that.
I mean, there is evidence. You can take just a certain amount of chemicals that would just happen to be laying around, and if they're collected together in such a way, and the universe is a huge superset, so like there's a bunch of possibilities that could happen. Like you can see that these things take on lifelike characteristics. So yeah, I would say it is possible.
Yep.
Maybe unlikely, but it is possible.
Yep. And it's possible that I could wake up in the morning with $1 million in my right pocket.
You could.
I could. But if I base my life on that, I would argue I'm being very stupid.
You would, but at the same time, you're not taking into account how massive the universe is. Like when you study probability, if you say that the works of if you do random letters, the works of Shakespeare is going to come up in the first 1,000 letters, you're kind of a fool. But one of the things about probability you understand is, given enough time, every works of Shakespeare will come up in the exact order that it was written.
Good, okay.
In the universe, I believe...
I don't know. To think about the probability of something to happen is almost impossible. It's the craziest odds that your mind could ever imagine. I think that you're more likely to wake up with $1 million in your pocket than for someone to actually evolve, or from a single cell to adapt. And who in the world put those cells and molecules in the lab in the first place? They didn't get there on their own. Make sure to watch, because John Lennox gives a great explanation why you need a creator.
Huge enough, massive on a scale that it's hard to even imagine that certain chemicals could just happen to come together and bring about lifelike properties.
But if you believe in the Big Bang, you know that the universe doesn't have eternity to produce life. You know that the universe came about 15 billion years ago. So you've got a limited amount of time, 15 billion years, for life to come about by chance. Now, if you and I and someone else are playing poker, and I'm dealing, and 10 times in a row, I deal a perfect hand to...
Hello, Hernandez. I could just start a rumor. Cliff is now gambling because he's playing poker. Just kidding.
Self. If you begin to say, Cliff, I think you're cheating, that's impossible for you to deal 10 hands, all perfect for yourself. And if I say to you, there are multiple numbers of universes, and we just happen to live in the universe where I can deal 10 perfect hands of poker for myself, I think you'll, if you're a Texan, be reaching for your 6-shooter to blow me away for taking all your money away from you. I don't think you're going to say, oh yeah, right, there are a multiple number of universes, there's an infinite amount of time, so I buy the line that you can deal 10 perfect hands of poker cards to yourself in a row. I think you know that that is highly implausible, and what is far more plausible is I'm cheating you out of your money.
No, and I agree. It is possible that you dealt yourself 10 perfect hands. I would never say that, oh, you dealt yourself 10 perfect hands. You were cheating, definitely, without a doubt. I would have some kind of investigation. I would probably check your sleeves and stuff like that and gather some more evidence. I'm not just going to, blindly accuse you. That would be unfair.
All right. Let's say I dealt 50 perfect hands of cards.
Once again, possible.
Really? How about 100?
Possible.
How about 200?
Possible.
It's possible? No
I don't think you
way.
can live your life that way.
I try to.
You can't.
I try.
Prove to me that this fine university is going to give you a diploma on your day of graduation. Prove to me that on your day of graduation, this fine university is not going to say, hey, we're going to break tradition. No diplomas this year. Can you prove that?
I can't prove it. I have a pretty good idea of what they're going to do, though.
Exactly.
Good. You see, sir, you don't base your life on proof. You base your life on evidence.
I agree.
And you cannot get irrevocable, watertight proof. As a thinking human being, you base your life on evidence. That's what I do. I think that's what the majority of us do who treasure our minds. We're not so naive to think I can prove something. Rather, we look for evidence, and then we ask ourselves, what is most plausible? What is most reasonable in light of the evidence? I can't prove God exists. I can't even prove I exist. Maybe I'm just a bad dream you're having. It is possible. But the overwhelming evidence is I do exist, and the overwhelming evidence is, in a different way, God exists. Not the proof, but the evidence.
That's so good. In my opinion, the evidence points to a creator more than all of us happening from nothing with this crazy, crazy, crazy amount of odds stacked against us. That actually was one of my favorite illustrations with dealing the cards perfectly. Let's just say it would be millions of times dealing the cards perfectly. You would call someone cheating. That's impossible. But that's what it's like with the universe. That's what it's like with us.
Okay, so what is the evidence for God?
The evidence for God is design demands a designer. 100 times out of 100, in my experience of life, a delicious meal points to a chef. A shirt points to a tailor. Mount Rushmore does not point to water dripping down over rocks and carving out George and Teddy and Thomas's face. 100 times out of 100, the BMW points to a mechanic. The building points to an architect and a builder. Never in my observation do you get order and design by chance. It demands a designer. Second piece of evidence. The fact that if oxygen comprised 25% of this atmosphere, fires would erupt all over the place. If it comprised 15%, we'd all suffocate. The fact that it comprises 21%, which is exactly what allows us to sustain life, demands some type of intelligent mind. That type of precision, that we have a life-sustaining planet instead of a life-defeating planet, demands some type of intelligent mind. Thirdly, the amount of densely packed information in a single cell, the DNA of a single cell, demands some type of intelligent mind for me. If you and I are walking up and down the beach and we come to ripples in the sand, and you say, hey Cliff, how'd those ripples get there? And I say, obviously because of the waves. That's cool. We keep walking down, we see in the sand, John loves Mary. You say, hey Cliff, how'd that get there? And I say, obviously the waves. Why is that ridiculous? Because densely packed information in the message, John loves Mary, cannot come about as a result of the waves washing over the sand. It demands an intelligent mind.
Yep.
So there's more information in the DNA of a single cell than there's information in 3 sets of the 30-volume Encyclopedia Britannica.
That's good.
It points me to some type of intelligent mind. So those are 3 pieces of evidence that point to...
That's so good. And I'm going to play another video later on that shows you how in depth these cells are. It's impossible, literally impossible, where it makes you almost have to believe in a creator.
Keep going, but why don't you speak now?
Okay, first I want to go ahead and about the one about the Earth being like a perfect place to like habit life. We've found hundreds of planets in our galaxy, in the tiny little space of our galaxy, that have the same same type of atmosphere, same size planet, all that kind of stuff. We've found planets that have the same kind of properties that Earth has, Earth-like planets. Okay, so it's not that out of the ordinary for Earth to just pop up out of nowhere. Do you want to refute that, or?
Well, yeah, first of all, I'd love to find out about where these other planets are that are life-sustaining like Earth is. I'm just curious.
I'm not saying they're sustaining life, I'm saying they're life-like. Or they're Earth-like. Like you're saying, like, you know, there's 21% oxygen, a bunch of nitrogen, all that kind of stuff. We found planets that have that same kind of makeup.
But isn't it true that I would never want you to take your spacesuit off if you're on that planet?
I mean, if we studied the atmosphere, we notice the atmosphere is like Earth, we could probably just take our helmets off. Be cool.
Really?
Yeah, that's why we say they're Earth-like planets. We can't get to them yet, obviously.
Where are these planets? Where are these planets?
They're in our galaxy, a very small sliver of our galaxy we've been able to study. We have found these planets.
All right, great. That still doesn't change my point, that when you study how life is balanced on a razor's edge on this planet, it demands an intelligent mind. I don't care how many planets there are out there that have similar. I would argue those planets have been created that way as well then, if they're life-sustaining. I mean, if you can go onto those planets and suck wind the way you do on here and live, and have the whole life process continue on, it's incredible. Because please don't go to the moon and take your helmet off.
I will, I promise.
Good.
But I'm just saying, like you say, that the life balanced on a razor edge. Life as we know it, our carbon-based life forms, as we know it, as humans, as tigers and bugs and all that kind of stuff, they require this type of atmosphere. That doesn't mean other life can require some kind of extreme atmosphere.
I agree.
So why are you saying life balanced on a razor's edge when it could definitely be on a much wider range?
Let's be honest. We have not actually found anything that proves that there's any life outside of this earth. And even if there was, it still wouldn't prove that there is no God. The fact how amazing and wonderfully complex this earth is points to a creator.
Well, the whole point is, your life and my life cannot be sustained on a planet where oxygen comprises 30% of the atmosphere. Fires would break out all over the place, we'd all burn to death. And if oxygen comprised 10% of our atmosphere, we'd all suffocate. So, I mean, it is so precise. I mean, think about Jupiter. The gravitational field of Jupiter sucks in all these comets and asteroids headed straight to smack planet Earth. It's an amazing vacuum cleaner, Jupiter is, and it protects us in an amazing way. Think about if the Earth spun more quickly on its axis. There wouldn't be life as we know it on this planet. So, I mean, the amazing balance of nature that sustains life demands some type of intelligent mind, doesn't it?
It sustains our life, but I mean, it doesn't require an intelligent mind. I'm just saying, what makes our life so special that it has to balance on that razor's edge?
All right. I have a brother who's a transplant surgeon. He transplants kidneys and livers down at Emory University Hospital, or over at Emory University Hospital in Atlanta. I can promise you, sir, he has gone through the most stringent academic courses in order to be able to transplant livers and kidneys. And if you need a liver transplant, I would encourage you not to go to someone who lives down on the drag to have them transplant. I would encourage you instead to turn to someone who has studied the amazing, intricate order and design of the human body and who can pull off that transplant in such a way that you're going to live instead of die of kidney or liver failure. Now, people love to say to me, oh, there's not that much order and design in the human body. See, the reason that I almost feel like calling them either inconsistent or an intellectual hypocrite is because you know very, very well that if you get sick enough, you're not going down to someone on the drag for help. You're going to the most highly trained doctor you can possibly find who understands the order and design of your body and who can correct the disorder that has occurred. That's my point.
Okay, that doesn't tell me why our life is special, why it has to hang on that razor's edge. You're saying our life is complicated to understand for us. Do you think a worm understands how its heart beats?
What does that have to do with anything we've been talking about?
Okay, it could be very complex to us how like we have to go to school for 10 plus years to understand how to do a liver transplant. How do we know there's not something else that just looks at us like, oh, hey, look, idiots trying to take out their liver again. And they can just do it as soon as they're born. And it's the same relative step from a worm to human to some other kind of life.
All right. If you have liver failure...
He's basing all of his theories off of something we have no idea. And there's no evidence for that. That's what he's getting at. He's letting you guys know, based off the evidence, it points to a creator and that we were made in the image of God and we have purpose through that. All right, Turu, tell me this. Do you eat pork? Do you honor the Sabbath every day and never work? Or do you honor the Sabbath? Do you eat pork? Do you eat shrimp? Do you keep your hair very long? I would love to know those questions.
I can promise you, you're not going to look at me and say it's relative. If you have liver failure and if you're on your way out of here, you know very, very well that you need a new liver in order to live.
agree.
And you're going to have a doctor do that transplant who has studied very carefully the order and design of the human body. You're not just going to let anybody mess with your liver, I hope.
I understand that, but I'm just saying, maybe we're not as smart as we think we are.
Oh, I agree with that. We are definitely not as smart as we think we are. A bunch of us are intellectual, arrogant twits. There's no question about it. But, sir, you can't deny the fact that there is amazing, intricate order and design to the human body. And you prove that you realize that when you don't go to the person on the strip to heal you. You go to a hospital. You go to the most highly trained doctor you can possibly get. Why? Because this thing is intricate. Really intricate. All right. Does intricate order and design come about by chance?
I don't think it's necessarily that complex, us. Like I'm saying, we could be the simplest, we could be very simple.
Okay.
We only think it's complex, that's all we know. It's the most complex thing, or one of the most complex things we've been able to study. There's still so much we don't know about the universe. Like we only know about 5% of what the universe is made of. The other stuff is just blind. We have no idea what it is. Right. We call it dark energy, dark matter. It's nothing to do with energy, man, nothing to do with matter. We just call it that because why not?
Okay.
So the fact that we can only understand a tiny little percentage of the universe, stuff that we haven't even seen, we just think, like, hey, this is what 5% of the universe is probably made up of.
Right.
Lets me know that we may not know what we're talking about all the time.
Okay. Okay, now just listen to what you're saying. And now consider me answering your question, why do I believe God exists, by saying, we know so little of all there is to reality, God must exist. I cannot live my life that way.
I'm glad.
I cannot do what you're doing to me, which is, we know so little that we got to just say God doesn't exist, because we got to realize that science is eventually going to be able to answer all our questions. That, for me, is intellectual dishonesty. Yes, we agree. We don't know everything. We know less than 1% of all there is to know, I'm convinced. But we got to do the best job we can with the evidence we have. We've got to use not these genius minds we have, but these amazing minds to look for evidence and then to ask ourselves what is most reasonable, what is most plausible, not what can we prove, but what is most reasonable, what is most plausible in light of the evidence. Okay, so I think we've moved from atheism to agnosticism, right? Okay, now, here's my problem with agnosticism. It's impossible to live out. What does that mean? Tonight, you will put your head on your pillow, I'll put my head on my pillow. Like it or not, you're living for something, I'm living for something. In other words, we have motive, we have ambition, we have priorities, we have drives and desires. Okay, now all you got to do is take your motives, push them back to their origin, and you'll find out what you worship. In other words, what you consider ultimately worthy. If you consider money ultimately worthy, you will get the best education you have, very specifically to make the most money you can. If you value education as ultimately worthy, you will live for your rational mind to be the most brilliant postdoc student you can be, and professor or whatever. If you live for physical pleasure, if that's the bottom line for you, then you will be the classic hedonist, and you'll live to stimulate your nerve endings. But you see, my question is, what's the evidence that the ultimate purpose of life is to make money, to have pleasure, to be smart? Now, Jesus says the ultimate purpose in life is to love God with your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and to love your neighbor as yourself. And you can use money, and you can enjoy sex within the context of a lifelong commitment, and you are responsible to use your rational mind because it's a precious gift from God, so you better not dabble in the irrational. You better think hard and straight. And you see, that worldview makes so much more sense than the options. But the idea that you can go to sleep and say, well, I don't believe anything's worth living for, means that you will not get up tomorrow morning, which is why Albert Camus...
Wow. So, Turu, you never even answered my question. There are things that are in the Old Testament that are now not under the same law that we were under. We don't obviously worship the picture. It's a remembrance of what God did for us. And obviously, I know that's not what God looks like. You need to stop being a hypocrite and follow even the thing that you were calling out, which you don't.
the great atheistic existentialist philosopher pointed out, the only question modern man must answer is, why not commit suicide? In other words, why get up tomorrow morning if life is ultimately meaningless? But you see, obviously, you're going to create some meaning. All right, we all do, right? Or else we accept the fact that God created.
So is honoring the Sabbath to keep it holy. What day is the Sabbath? It's Saturday. Do you worship God only on Saturday and never work or do anything? You got to be intellectually honest here.
For a purpose. So you see, the question then that I have for you is, what are you living for? And then secondly, what is this overwhelming evidence that convinces you that whatever it is you're living for is reliable?
Well, I would say that I don't believe there is like an ultimate meaning in the first place, so I can choose my own way to live.
Right.
And if it's relative, then there's nothing you can say that's wrong.
Correct. Which means tomorrow morning when you get up, if you figure out how to steal money from people, or if you figure out how to help hurting people, it ultimately doesn't matter, because it's whatever you choose, right? Okay, now, if you begin to think about that deeply enough, you begin to realize, whoa, this life is a crapshoot. And then you have to struggle with despair. And you see, what so concerns me is exactly what concerned Friedrich Nietzsche, that there are so many people who think that life is meaningless, but they think, let's have a great time today.
Wow. At the end of the day, if there is no God, there is no meaning. But if there is a God, he intrinsically made you for a purpose and has a calling, an amazing plan for your life. So now we're going to be reacting to another day. Yeah, you know what the seventh day is? Saturday. Are you honoring the Sabbath day to keep it holy and not working or resting completely or worshiping God? You should be worshiping God on Saturday, not Sunday. Because the Bible doesn't say to worship God on Sunday. All right. Now I'm going to play another video for you guys. And let's go. I think it's funny how you think I'm Catholic. That's actually really funny. All right, I gotta see. I took a picture of when I need to. 4:03. No, I'm just showing you the hypocrisy in your statement. What's up?
The idea of need is a very curious one. I'm interested in truth. Was there a creator or was there...
Is there a need for a creator? John Lennox discusses the beginning of the universe, why there has to be a creator. Let's get into it. Oops.
I've written a book. Now, I know this is a curious one. I'm interested in truth. Was there a creator or was there not a creator? Now, I know this is a popular view today because Hawking popularized it. There's no need for a creator. There's nothing for a creator to do. But I have analyzed his arguments very carefully. In fact, I've written a book about them called God and Stephen Hawking. And his method of getting rid of a creator, to my mind, does not work at all. because what he does, and others do the same thing, like Lawrence Krauss of Arizona State University, they talk about the universe. Well, let me quote Hawking to you. He says, because there is a law such as gravity, the universe can and will create itself from nothing. Now, when I first read that, and that's the key statement in the book by Hawking and Mlodinow, The Grand Design, that's the key statement, I was staggered, because it's self-contradictory to start with, because there is a law of gravity.
Thank you. I would love prayers. That would mean a lot. Pray for me that I will continue to serve Jesus and love Jesus, and I'll experience Jesus.
Because there is something. The universe can create itself from nothing. That's a flat contradiction. Oh. And then to say the universe can create itself, that's logical nonsense. If I say that X creates Y, roughly speaking, I'm saying if you've got X, you may in the end get Y. But if I say X creates X, then that simply proves to me, sorry for being provocative, it simply proves to me that nonsense remains nonsense, even if high-powered scientists say it.
Wow.
So that's...
He said nonsense remains nonsense. What is my agenda?
Second thing that's wrong with that statement, it is logical nonsense. But then the idea of nothing is fascinating. In fact, I give lectures on nothing these days because nothing turns out to be very interesting. Because how they get a universe from nothing is by redefining nothing. It's very hard to believe this, but Lawrence Krauss, in his book, A Universe from Nothing, tells us fairly early on, he says this, because something is physical, nothing much must be physical, especially if you define it as the absence of something. That is absolute foolish absurdity. Now, if you have to go to that extreme to get rid of God, you're not getting rid of God at all. You're not getting a universe from nothing, so you're failing spectacularly to solve the problem that Hawking and Krauss set up for themselves at the beginning of their books, and that is Leibniz's question, why is there something rather than nothing? And that's why I am not impressed by these attempts to say we don't need God. I think you do, because the very interesting thing is many of these people getting a universe from nothing, which doesn't work because their nothing is actually something, a quantum vacuum or something like that, will say the laws of nature do it. Well, where do they come from? They don't answer that question. So it seems to me that before we start, you need a God to structure the universe in such a way that it's got laws. And one of my main reasons for being a believer in God, apart from my Christianity, of course, is that science can be done. And science can be done as Newton, Galileo, Kepler, Clerk Maxwell, Babbage, and all those pioneers believed, because there's an intelligent God behind the universe. And C.S. Lewis put it brilliantly when he said, men became scientific because they expected law in nature, and they expected law of nature because they believed in a legislator, a lawgiver. I often say to people, you know, modern science in a very real way is the gift of the Judeo-Christian worldview to humanity. And that's why I'm not ashamed of being a scientist and a Christian simultaneously, because arguably it was Christianity gave me my worldview. Amen. And so Newton and company, they started, their belief in God did not hinder their science, it was the motor that drove it. And I think we need to get back to seeing that that is the real source of modern scientific research.
That's absolutely amazing. So good. So guys, I encourage you all to go to Jesus today, to know that he loves you and he's longing to have a relationship with you guys. In the link below, there will be a link for you to click to help you to decide to follow Jesus for the first time. I encourage you to do that today. And if you want to support me on Patreon, you can do that as well. Love and appreciate you all. Have an amazing day. All right. Turo, how do you pronounce her name? Taro? Question. Do you have any pictures in your house? I'm not leaving. I'm just that was the end of my video. Do you have any pictures in your house? You cannot have any pictures in your house. You can't have any images because you might worship it. That's so sad. So go take down all of the images of your family, of the people around you. Delete all of the pictures off your phone. Actually, you shouldn't even be looking at this video right now because it's an image and you could be worshiping it. That's you can't even watch a worship video. That's not allowed either because you're watching someone worship. That's so sad. Like, it's important to understand the Bible and context, guys. And this is the problem with people taking one verse and completely disregarding everything else within the Bible, which a lot of people do, sadly. No, I'm getting it. I've read all of the 10 Commandments before, lots of times. You need to understand. You need to understand the context, just like understanding the context when there's a lot of commands in the Bible about genocide, or people think there's slavery is allowed. So many things. You need to be able to read in context and read the overarching thing of the story. All right. Moving on to our next show. Okay. Who's ready for the next video? No, I do not pray to Mary. Sorry. Okay. All right. So Richard Dawkins says that. Oh my goodness. The gap in the fossil record doesn't prove that God is real. So make sure to watch till the end because I have another video explaining why there has to be a God. So make sure to watch till the end because also I will have a Bible verse that will tie all of this together. Let's get into it.
Yeah,
There's a confusing array of creationist models. There are the people who think that the world was created in 7 literal days and that these represent ages. I can understand the people who, I don't understand why they think the Earth is 6,000 to 10,000 years old now. That's an untenable position. But if that's what they believe, I can understand why understanding evolution would be more difficult for them because they don't even accept that that time is there. But I'm more baffled by the apologists and creationists who think oh, of course, the universe is 13.7 billion years old, the Earth's 4.5 billion, but that's still not enough time when we have the evidence.
Yeah, there are people like that. There was a nice story told by J.B.S. Haldane, the great British geneticist, one of the founders of the neo-Darwinian synthesis. And after a lecture, a lady stood up and asked him a question and put exactly this point. She said, "Professor Haldane, I simply can't believe that there's been enough time, even given billions of years, to go from a single-celled ancestor to something like me, a multicellular creature, trillions of cells with the heart and lungs and brain and kidneys and bones and things. Just doesn't make sense." "Madam, you did it yourself, and it only took you 9 months.
Wow.
To which, of course,
I think it's funny how they could say that, but then what about God? What if he decided that he wanted to make things happen a lot faster than what you would think?
she could have retorted, yes, but that in that 9 months the process was supervised by DNA, or she would have called it genes in those days. And that, of course, is correct. And what evolution does, what natural selection does, is to choose those genes that supervise the embryological process that does that amazing trick in 9 months.
So in this process, one of the key aspects that we come up against is transitional forms, and people have different views of what that means. So a creationist might say, oh, you haven't found any transitional forms, or you haven't found a missing link. And for years, when I'm asked this question on the show, well, first of all, I point out that that you're calling into the atheist experience, and I'm not a biologist, and if you maybe you're talking to the wrong guy about this. But I had always responded that everything is a transitional form, that all of us are a transition between our ancestors and our progeny, and this, I don't know that this has the impact on others that it had on me, because they seem to be looking at it backwards. Backwards, it's a little easier to say, oh, this is clearly a transition.
Yes, I mean, everything is potentially a transition. Not everything actually is, but potentially it is. Michael Shermer makes rather a nice point, which is that when there's a gap in the fossil record, which
okay, they're like, clearly things need to be transitioned, but everything is not transition. But if everything is evolution, wouldn't there have to be a transition?
in quite a number of places, because fossilization is quite a rare event. So that we have this gap. They say, there's a gap. And then somebody finds a fossil right in the middle of the gap, which is a transitional form. Now we've got 2 gaps.
And then they told 2 friends, and they told 2 friends, and so on. It's interesting to me that so much emphasis, I think, as people were battling against this idea in the modern era, because we're trying to teach it in schools, and of course there are religious people objecting, this idea of a missing link kept coming up.
Corpse, how are you? Good to see you. It's been a while. I hope your mom's doing well. I was praying for your mom. Thought about her.
Well, the missing link was in Victorian times. That meant the missing link between apes and humans, and there were no fossils, no hominid fossils in Darwin's time. Darwin looked at the modern anatomy of chimpanzees and gorillas and correctly inferred that we are African apes, that we evolved in Africa. And since that time, of course, there have been lots and lots of fossils discovered in South Africa, in East Africa, and even North Africa. So we have lots and lots of links. They're not missing anymore. They're missing on the chimpanzee side of the divide, because you have a common ancestor which lived about 6 million years ago.
Wow, I'm so glad, Corpse. Praise God. I'm happy for you and happy for your mom.
And then it branched, and went down one side towards chimpanzees and bonobos, which branched again there, and then the other side went down to humans. And we've got plenty of fossils down the human line. So there's no dearth of links there. They're no longer missing. There aren't any fossils down the chimpanzee line. And that's regrettable. It may be because they're forest dwellers and it's more difficult to fossilize in forest conditions. But there are plenty of missing links. No longer missing.
But you can't know. You weren't there.
Yeah. Yes. How do you deal with that kind of thing? Yes, of course. One analogy that I like to use to that is to say a detective comes upon the scene of a crime after it's been committed, more or less by definition, and works out what happened. Sherlock Holmes, Hercule Poirot, they look at fingerprints, they look at footprints, they look at all the cues that are available around, there's a window open or the window closed or whatever it might be, and you work out what happened by looking at the clues. That's sort of what we do. But the difference is, whereas Sherlock Holmes or Hercule Poirot had a limited number of clues, we have millions and millions and millions of clues. We have fossils, we have the geographical distribution of animals and plants on islands and continents of the world. They're distributed in exactly the places they should be distributed if evolution had taken place. We look at fossils, we look at molecular, comparative molecular sequencing. You can see.
Okay, but Turo, you have to have money to survive. The Bible says the love of money is the root of all evil. But he didn't say money is bad. We need money to survive and have foods. Also, we need money in order for us to bless others financially and to take care of others. So the Bible also does talk about being lazy. You can't be lazy. So what does that mean? You need to work hard to make money.
The DNA or the proteins of any creature you like, animal or plant, and you can find genes that are clearly the same gene, but with differences in the details. And so you can literally count the number of discrepancies between a human and a possum, or a human and a beetle. It doesn't matter what it is. You can find a gene where it's obviously the same gene, and you can literally count the number of letter discrepancies between them. And you plot it all out, and you find a beautiful hierarchical tree, a beautiful pedigree. It's got to be a pedigree. And so that's what you can do with molecular data. That's sort of what Darwin himself was able to do with bones and comparative anatomy. And that's persuasive enough, goodness knows. But with molecules, it's even more persuasive. So you don't have to have been there. The evidence is just mountainously high.
I think this ties back a lot into different views of knowledge, where when it's convenient, they would like there to be certainty. And I'm always happy to point out that they believe in Jesus, and they weren't there when he was crucified as well. So clearly, we can infer some things and come to reasonable conclusions. When we talk about science, it's a couple of the beautiful
That's crazy
things
how they're always coming for Christians. They believe in Jesus, but they weren't there as well. No one's, I haven't said, at least, that I don't believe it because I wasn't there. I don't believe it because I wasn't there. Doesn't mean it's true, though. At the end of the day, we're talking about a creator who created the universe, not about how things were created. We're talking about who created it.
Is that it's self-correcting, and yet the creationists will just constantly point to, oh, here's an anomaly, here's an error, here's a mistake, here's a hoax, as if they could disprove evolution and all of a sudden their creation model wins. And to me, it was, even if we find out tomorrow that everything we understood about natural selection were wrong, that still wouldn't lend any credence to it.
That's right. No, I mean, you have two hypotheses, A and B, and A has a lot going for it, and B has nothing whatever going for it. So, and then you find a single slight discrepancy. Something went wrong with A, as you say, a hoax, Piltdown man, whatever it is. Right, that's it for A. Must be B. And that's the level of logic we have to deal with.
Oh. You have an alibi. Oh, the butler did it then. Yes, we're done.
Exactly, yes, exactly.
Obviously, you don't want your view on religion.
So now, guys, I'm going to play a video from... Oh, it's not there yet. All right, I'm going to get it up. All right. All right. So now I'm going to be playing this video from Discovery Science explaining about the cell, how crazy and wonderful complex it is, and how this might definitely point to a creator. Let's get into it.
In fact, this log is currently being decomposed by tiny fungi that are vastly more complex than this drone. I'm Mike Behe. Welcome to the unseen world of organic micro-machines. Every living thing in the world is made of cells. Microbes are single-celled organisms. Advanced life forms have trillions of cells.
Wow.
Inside a cell is a bustling operation of interconnected molecular machinery so sophisticated it would put any modern high-tech factory to shame. This intricate machinery is what gives the cell its remarkable abilities to process energy, execute genetic instructions, and replicate, all with unbelievable efficiency. I'm a biochemist, a scientist who studies...
That's absolutely insane. It's such a crazy visual. Like, the cells within our body are crazy and so much more complex than even something made by man. Wow. That's absolutely wild.
Molecules of life. There's never been a more exciting time to be a life scientist. This is a golden age of discovery in molecular biology. Stunning breakthroughs in our understanding of the most fundamental unit of life, the cell, have been coming faster and faster. My own view of the cell took a turn years ago. I was in a lab at the National Institutes of Health doing postdoctoral research. I was discussing the origin of life with a fellow postdoc. As she and I thought about the cell, we wondered, how could its complex membrane, proteins, metabolism, genetic code, how could all that have formed by the accumulation of undirected changes?
That is a good question. How in the world could that happen under undirected changes? I get directed changes, you know, but undirected changes, kind of weird.
So we were both sort of stunned by the notion, but then we just laughed it off. We figured that even if we didn't know the answer, somebody must know. Well, in the 10 years after that, I didn't come across any science publications that adequately answered the nagging question, exactly how did the cell get to be so complex? Everything I read presumed that those biological mysteries would eventually be solved by Darwin's theory of evolution. Being an evolutionist myself, that was fine with me. Then I came across a book titled Evolution, a Theory in Crisis by a geneticist, Michael Denton. It addressed profound problems with Darwin's theory. It asked hard questions about the origins of life. And it showed that science didn't have the answers. No matter that everyone assumed it did, or assumed that it would eventually, or something. I was flabbergasted by the book. I began to look at biology with a fresh set of eyes. And I started asking questions. Lots of questions. That's what this series is about, asking questions. Not about the why or when, but about the how of biological origins.
That's good.
As I said, there's never been a more exciting and fun time to be a biologist.
Amen.
So I'm really looking forward to jumping into this series, and I hope you'll join me.
That's so cool. He said something about the theory of the Darwin evolution seems off. And I think that's important to know. Every mystery about the natural. All right. But then read a book that said he didn't have. All right, so now we're going to John Lennox explain why science points to a creator.
I believe that science does point towards God. And one of the strongest evidences for that from astronomy and cosmology is the so-called fine-tuning of the universe. I remember having a discussion with a very well-known Oxford philosopher who's an atheist. And he had asked me to address his students on why I believed in God. And he said, I hope you're going to use the best argument against atheism from science. And I said, well, if you tell me what it is, I'll use it. And he said, if ever I was to be persuaded to become a believer, it would be because of fine-tuning. Now, the idea here is that over the past 50 to 100 years, it has been discovered that not only is this Earth obviously a very special place in the sense that if we were further from our sun, life would not be possible because it would be too cold. If the Earth were near to the sun, it would not be possible because we're too hot and many other things. But the fundamental...
Okay, Turo, this is the last time I'm going to respond to this. Anger is not from God, according from Turo. Jesus got angry. Did you know that? The Bible says, be angry and sin not. So don't let anger cause you to sin. All right. Now back to the show.
Constants of nature have turned out to be so accurately tuned in order to have life in the universe that the scientists themselves, whether they're atheists, Christians, or people of different worldviews, all think there's something here to be explained. Stephen Hawking, Lord Rees, who's our astronomer royal, and so on. They all think there's something there. And that intrigues me, and I believe there is something there. Now, in order to get away from the idea of fine-tuning, it's so improbable that you have to have some mechanism for reducing, for increasing the probabilities. And one of the ways of doing that is the multiverse. From a scientific perspective, I was taught quantum physics by Sir John Polkinghorne, and he makes the point that the multiverse, these universes, are not accessible to us, and that it's much more natural to believe, and much more sensible, I would say, to believe in a single universe created by a creator rather than a multiverse to which we've no access and where there's no evidence that it exists. Now, a great deal has been written about this. But I find it's a very interesting thing because you don't have to go against the main flow of science to use this as an argument. This is mainstream science, admitting that the universe is fine-tuned. And there's increasing evidence that, in a sense, biology, organisms are fine-tuned. And that is another level entirely.
Woo! Shout out to John Lennox. Yeah. I hear over and over now that the universe was fine-tuned, but they won't say it was a creator. They'll even say it almost had it like a designer. Guys, everything has to be, if it was designed, there was a creator. Fine-tuned for life to happen. So many things. Absolutely amazing. So guys, I encourage you guys to go to Jesus today. Know that he loves you and he's longing to have a relationship with you. If you haven't decided to follow Jesus, I encourage you to do that for the first time. Please click the link in the description. It'll help you to decide to follow Jesus for the first time. It will be the best decision of your entire life. I also started a Patreon, guys, if you want to support me on there and be a part of a community and do Zoom call once a month with me and so much more. Check that out as well. Have an amazing day. All right, I have one more video that we're going to do today. Oh, I need to keep on moving because my butt kind of hurts. Sorry for that information. Oh, great. I would love to get curtains. I'm like, it's so bright in here and all the lights that I have don't even make a difference. All right, last video. This one is Wes Huff. This video just came out. Wes Huff responds to the video of Billy Carson on Ruslan's podcast. All right, let's see if we can find this video. This one's gonna be great. All right, who's ready for a fun video? Okay. All right. I gotta get this set up. Okay. How's everyone's day going? I hope it's great. I hope your day is going so well you don't feel like being a stickler for things. All right, you guys ready for this? This is going to be a fun one. So Wes Huff responds. Wes Huff responds to all the craziness that Billy Carson's last video came out about on Ruslan's podcast. So let's get right into it. And I can't wait to watch it with you guys. Here we go.
moment, or did it just kind of getting traction on your YouTube?
Text messages to Billy saying,
Bruce Lawn.
When was the first time you saw a little blip in terms of just getting traction on your YouTube stuff? Do you remember that moment, or did it just kind of, was it just slow, gradual, and then boom, Billy Carson debate happens and everything explodes?
Yeah, when we released the Can I Trust the Bible series in March of 2024, there were a lot of people who were taking notice of that.
Okay.
Now that's gone crazy, especially since I played a clip of it on Rogan. I mean, purposefully. Shameless self-promotion. But that series, I mean, I had a little bit of a following, but it was pretty neat.
JPM, I will be praying for you to get to know God more and to put your faith and trust in him, to surrender your life completely to him.
Before the Can I Trust the Bible series, the Can I Trust the Bible series launched, and we were really promoting that, and that got, and we signed a deal with Right Now Media where they were also promoting it, and so I think that got a lot of traction. And then I started to see the social media following with both myself and AC, Apologetics Canada, grow. But since the Billy Carson thing, I mean, that's just been injected with steroids, which has been interesting to see and totally unpredictable.
Yeah.
Would you be willing to run it back with Billy Carson?
Yeah, I don't think he will, though.
But would you be willing to?
Yeah, of course I would.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, so let me preface that. Yes and no. I mean,
Billy Carson would just get destroyed even further because he still said all of those same arguments that he's used the entire time in his life to Wes. And he's saying he wasn't his best game. He wasn't feeling his best. He just got out of the hospital. He was alive. It would just be worse. Not unless he uses some crazy, like, debate skills. I don't know.
Concrete way, I think myself, Mark Menard, who set the thing up, Anton, who was the media manager for Mark, we're all moving on. Like, we don't want to be known as the Billy Carson rebuttal people. All three of us. And so we are, in a very concrete way, we're moving on to bigger and better things. It can be argued that Billy is not, but we are moving on. So I don't want to dwell on the Billy Carson thing. But if Billy wants to run things back, I'm perfectly willing to do that. I just don't think he's going to. And I kind of want to get him into a room and push him on some of the things that happened in his 3-hour live stream.
But I am so glad that Wes Huff finally was able to, a video finally went out that debunked him. Because when I first made videos of Billy Carson, he had so many fans just saying, you don't know what you're talking about. How dare you call out the one true foremost knowledge of ancient manuscripts and textual papyruses. So many things. They're like, how dare you? And now my last video of like talking about the situation, no one was defending Billy Carson.
Yeah, that was bad. Did you see his conversation with Dr. Amen?
Unfortunately, yeah, I did.
Man, I felt that was the first time I thought, and I don't want to ask a bunch of more Billy Carson questions, but that was the first time where I think he humanized himself, and he took like the first bit of like responsibility and ownership in terms of failing in any regard. That was the first time I saw him do that, and he would the only thing he really owned up to failing was that live stream. He was like, I failed in that live stream, and I went live, and I didn't do a good job. And I was like, that may be the beginning of him at least growing past this, because it just seems like he just keeps making.
Sean, welcome, my friend. Welcome, my friend.
Mess out of it, instead of like, you either got to be quiet and don't say anything else about it, or you got to lean all the way into it and say, hey, I want to run it back in a formal setting with a moderator, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, here's the thing. We gave him so many opportunities to do that. Even before Mark put out the initial debate, which kind of got downloaded and reposted, we told him we can ignore that and just do an in-person thing. Like, there were opportunities to do that he ignored and instead chose to go about a route that resulted in what he eventually did in the 3-hour live stream. And even in the recent video that he did, he's still not admitting that some of the details were what actually happened.
Yeah.
He's still saying he got blindsided. He's still saying he didn't really know who I am. And listen.
Yeah, that's crazy. He's about to say something that's super important. They have text messages showing this is who he is. They even say that it was a debate. That's what's crazy. I didn't know that. Literally everything that he's saying was a lie.
I've talked to Mark as recently as yesterday about this because we have all the receipts. I mean, we have text messages to Billy saying who I am, what my credentials are, what we were going to be talking about. The word debate was used.
That is crazy.
In the day previous when this whole thing was set up.
And there's text messages of all this stuff.
Yeah, of course there is. I've seen them.
I have a massive.
That is crazy.
I'm sure by this point.
And when I edit this video, I'm gonna put in Billy Carson claiming that I had no idea it was an ambush. They're grilling me. And everyone's just saying, grilling? Seriously? Grilling? Oh, man, it's too good. It is too good.
As well. I'll see you over there, all right? Peace. It's like a perfect origin story of a villain. Like everything you're describing, because he goes from being this beloved, kind of quirky person doing all this podcast run, and then the way that all unfolded from the Ring door cam at 2 a.m. to these text messages. I have never seen and now his wife, my buddy Mike Kelly, sent me a video. Apparently his wife is doing a podcast tour and addressing Wes Huff and all this stuff, and I'm just like, just let it die.
Yeah, he needs. We all need to move on. I mean, I wish Billy the best. I think the best thing he can do right now is just move on.
Yeah,
we want to move on. He wants to move on.
Yeah.
I know when I was on the PBD podcast, Patrick said, like, will you run it back? We'll arrange it. And I said yes, but I honestly don't think he will.
Yeah,
I don't think he is going to put himself into a position where he can get his facts checked.
Yeah,
because I think his whole brand was.
Ronnie, how's it going? Yeah, God is good. And it's so cool that he used the situation of someone that we were calling out for like a whole year of saying this guy's lying like crazy. He used the situation to bring up someone who actually speaks the truth and to go on all those amazing platforms. That is God taking a situation and turning it into good. I'm sorry for this person. Sorry that Billy Carson, maybe he's not having the best life now. I'm sure he's comfortably fine and wealthy still.
Him saying things and relying on his audience not
being ignorant,
being able to actually understand what they were talking about. And Mark, Anton, and I have all heard from no word of an exaggeration, hundreds of people who have simply said, I just didn't know. I just took him at face value. And to see him not just not give a good rebuttal, but give no rebuttal to these things that he's been saying, going back to 2017, shocked me. Like these are the messages we're kind of getting. And saying, I need to rethink everything I really believe about what I've been relying on in terms of my worldview, or even like a message recently, this lady said, like, I've been teaching my kids this stuff for 5 years.
Wow.
And now I'm trying to almost when people are in a cult and they have to do training to try to undo all that stuff. She's like, I feel like I'm doing that and it feels weird because I'm the one who taught them this stuff. So yeah, I wish Billy the best. I wish his family the best. I don't know what he's talking about when he talks about death threats. And
that's absolutely crazy. Before he gets into the death threats things, yeah. So people are taking what he's saying and then teaching it to their kids. Oh my goodness. How in the world did it get down to this level of deception? Oh wow. Seriously. I can't like, when you watch that video, he tries to get you to feel bad for him, but when you hear these stories, Ronnie, where do you live again? Is it Michigan? You said it's freezing.
Coming after his kid, and you said it. I've heard you say it. I will say it. Like, all of that stuff is reprehensible.
Yep.
People should not be doing that.
Yep.
But it has nothing to do with myself, Mark, or Anton.
Yeah.
None of us have done
Yep.
that.
Yeah. Well, I think at that point it's just sheer volume. If
Sure.
5 million people, 10 million people see the story,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
a certain percentage of them are going to be crazies and are going to potentially do some crazy things.
Right.
That's true. And I heard people are like, "There's no way Christians would do that." New Hampshire. Oh yeah, that's cold. What was I gonna say? I heard that it's a lot of his fans turning on him. A lot of the people that were following him are the ones who were commenting all these crazy things because they're upset at being lied to.
Way I can explain it, because I don't know anyone who reacted to this even gave the tone of like go personally harass him.
Yeah.
It's always been, hey, just have the conversation again.
Yeah.
Oh man, that's really interesting that he got these basic things wrong. Which, by the way, those of us have been following. I mean, he's been getting basic stuff wrong. Like whenever the word God is in the Bible, it's always plural.
Oh,
like
yeah.
that's
No,
such
that's
an easily
easy.
debunkable,
Yeah.
debunkable thing. But the beautiful part is the fruit of all this, like the fruit of
That's what I was saying.
people coming to Jesus, coming to the faith, coming back to the faith, maybe people that drifted, and the outpouring of support that you've gotten in the messages and the comments of, hey, I came back to the faith because of watching this conversation with Billy, and then going down and checking out your channel, and now I'm Team Jesus. Like that to me, I don't think I've ever seen anything like that on the internet.
Yeah, no, it's undeniably divinely orchestrated. I think it is. There's no way I could have gotten myself into a conversation with Billy Carson. When I made response videos, which by the way, I only had started doing like maybe a few months before that interaction actually happened. Because I don't think it was the Andrew Schultz Flagrant podcast, which was the one that people were sending me and being like, what is this guy talking about? Right? Because they didn't know. He says things, people don't know what they don't know. And I understand that. But I had friends and people reaching out to me and saying, this guy's putting this out there. How would you respond to it? And so one night when I couldn't sleep, I just kind of mapped out how I would respond to it. And the next day I just threw a video together. Like it wasn't even that much of a planning that went into it. And then I clipped it and I put it on Instagram. But I don't know if it was even 4 months before the actual interaction with Billy. It was during that summer. And that's when I started to, because I realized I didn't truly know who Billy was. Prior to that, I had actually mutual friends of ours, Melissa Doherty.
Oh? Yeah,
she was throwing around this idea. Yeah, her book just came out. Yeah,
Give
Happy
a quick
Lies.
plug to Melissa. I just got your book.
Go
Thank
get that
you,
book.
1 Corinthians 3:11, for no one can lay any foundation other than the one already laid, which is Jesus Christ. Amen.
Yes.
It's excellent. There's a great endorsement in the front by this guy, Wes Huff, I think it's.
But yeah, I remember making a reaction video to Billy Carson last summer. And all of that was... all of that was pretty crazy, just to think about someone making these outlandish claims and people were taking it as he knows something that no one else knows. It was so frustrating for me as like a content creator.
So Melissa and I were talking about, we were going to do this video which never got put together called The Gospel According to TikTok, where we were going to go through a bunch of TikTok videos where people were just saying ridiculous things about the Bible.
nice.
And one of them was Billy Carson.
That's
In
cool.
fact, it was the one where he said, I am the world leading expert in biblical texts. That's where I found that clip. That was my first introduction. And then when he was on the Flagrant podcast, I was like, I recognize this guy. And went back in my messages with Melissa and found that video. But this didn't go that far back. And so the fact that I went from that to those gaining traction to Mark seeing, or Anton sending Mark my stuff, Mark feeling like he couldn't get in this conversation and really interact and navigate it the way he wanted to.
Yeah.
Reaching out to me 24 hours beforehand, me happening to see that DM, that conversation happening, Billy reacting like he did, that gaining traction because he tried to suppress it, him trying to sue us, Rogan seeing that. Like,
That's
all of these
crazy.
things are nothing any one of us could have put together.
Such a God thing. Such a God thing. Allowing first, it's just such a amazing thing to see. First, we have Billy Carson going on all these podcasts spreading lies, and then because of Billy Carson's lies getting debunked, then Wesley Huff got to be used by God and going on the same podcast that Billy Carson was going on to spread truth.
Micromanaged.
Absolutely.
It is unanimously, unequivocally a God thing.
The Lord will just breathe on certain things, and it just is what it is.
Yeah.
And I think that was cool. I didn't realize how mainstream it was until I saw that Oompaville video reacting to it, and I was like, "Oh, this is like
that was crazy.
This is like mainstream YouTube culture."
I think you sent that to me.
Yeah, I did send it.
I didn't even realize that was happening.
Yeah.
And that was the first time I think you said this to me, where it was like it's broken out of the Christian circle.
Yep.
Because that really did make it go outside of that. And then there were some rumblings of people that I knew who were like, I think Rogan is paying attention to this. But I was still joking with people that like, I'll get in contact with Rogan after I get in contact with Trump. Like,
That's funny.
Well, the Trump part doesn't sound as outlandish now that you've done Rogan.
I know.
Funny
Well, the
part.
crazy thing about all this is when we're doing like planning stuff with Apologetics Canada, we're like, who's the crazy person?
Yeah.
Because at this point, nobody feels crazy.
Yeah.
Like when you get DM'd.
Are we gonna be seeing a podcast with Joe Rogan? No. Are we gonna see a podcast with Wes Huff and Donald Trump? No. The podcast that I really do want to see is Wes Huff on the Flagrant podcast. That's when I would absolutely love it, because that's actually where I heard of Billy Carson first, was on the Flagrant podcast, like you were saying.
Joe Rogan.
Right.
Nothing else feels
That's right.
like impossible.
That's right. Hey, we're going to go to the Patreon.
Amen. That's absolutely amazing. So, guys, now I'm going to get a Bible verse. Yes, we can end on a good note for you, Brother Turo. Okay. What are your guys' thoughts on this? All right. Oops. Genesis 50:20. You intended to harm me, but God intended it all for good. He brought me to this position so I could save the lives of many people. That's so good. And that's what it seems like. It seems like the enemy, at the end of the day, Billy Carson's not the enemy, but in general, the enemy uses lies to deceive people. But then God turned around this situation that a lot of Christians were upset about, and then it turned into something so amazing to get the gospel out to millions and millions of people for the truth. So I think that's so cool. So guys, if you haven't decided to follow Jesus, I encourage you to do that today. I have a link in the description to help you, and it'll walk you right through to decide to follow Jesus for the first time. And thank you guys so much for watching. Did you know that the King James Bible was written in the 1600s, or it was put together in the 1600s? And when they was writing that Bible, they only had 8 manuscripts that they were using. And now we have 5,000, the thousands of more manuscripts that we can base off of now our Bibles today, proving that the King James Bible is actually technically a lot newer than some of the others. And I'm not wrong. I can promise you that. It's funny how you're like, in the King James Bible we trust. The King James Bible is great. I love the King James Bible. Yeah, it's coming to an end. I just finished. I finished earlier. The King James Bible is the Word of God, but also so is other versions of the Bible. I would say that the ESV is probably closer than any other. I can't believe he called me a little snot. The King James Bible is great. I learned a lot of my memory verses in King James. Like Psalms 1. Blessed is the one who walks not in the counsel of the ungodly, nor stands in the way of sinners, nor sits in the seat of the scornful. But his delight is in the law of the Lord, and in his law he shall meditate day and night. And he should be like a tree planted by rivers of water that bringeth forth fruit in season, and whatever those leaves shall not. I don't know. I forgot the rest. And whatever he does, the leaves will not. Whenever he does, everything will prosper. Something like that. All right, Corpse. 11, appreciate you. I'm going to continue to pray for your mom. I've been called worse. Yeah. It's just that I don't, you can see, like, if you want to be more, like, closer to the manuscripts, the King James Bible's great. But we found later documents that are a lot older than the ones that they used to write the King James Bible. That's all. Yeah, I mean, let's be honest. If anyone's reading the 1600 King James Version, the original one, I tried reading it. There's some words in there that are not even used in the modern English language. That's what's difficult. I know. Oh, I love orange chicken. Not gonna lie. Oh, that's my favorite. All right, guys, I gotta get going. I gotta finish getting everything good. Love you guys. Love and appreciate you. Bye, Sean. Bye, Hernandez. Luke. Punches. Bye, Taro. Bye, Jake. Bye, The Real. How do you say your name? The Real NDNG.